Now that was me playing Dave Barbour's solo on a TV performance of the tune Why Don't You Do Right with Peggy Lee from, I think, 1951 or 2. He's not a guitar player talked about much these days, but he was a great composer, he wrote many great songs, and also a fantastic guitarist. He played with Louis Armstrong, obviously Peggy Lee, who he is married to, and he played for Benny Goodman. I think he took the guitar chair from Charlie Christian in Benny Goodman's band when Charlie died, and Dave Barbour was actually kicked out of Benny Goodman's band because he broke the rule of the band, which was not to have any relations with the singers, and the singer I think was Peggy Lee, and they ended up getting married. So this is an interesting performance. He's there on his blonde Gibson P90s, sounds lovely. Nice little bit of sort of break up to the sound as well. I picked this out because it's a very short solo, it's quite accessible, it's quite easy in terms of note choice and rhythms, and the tab and notation is available to download. Just check the link in the description. If you want to find the performance, just look up Peggy Lee, Dave Barbour, Why Don't You Do Right. So here's 5 things I really like in this solo. We're in the key of D minor, and what's he using? Kind of using a hybrid approach in terms of scales, if he was thinking about scales, with a mixture of sort of the harmonic minor and the blues scale, if you like, so the mixture of these two sounds. And the first thing I really liked that drew me to this was the start of it. The repetition of this F, this minor third. So it's over the D minor and it's going after the lead-in phrase. We just get this F for 2 bars with a tiny little bend on like that. And what he's doing here is the minor third, which naturally sounds bluesy against that. Rather than just keeping his finger down and going, which would sound deathly boring, he's releasing pressure and putting it back on in between each note. So each one's tailed, like staccato like. It's not quite staccato space, but it's not letting it ring out for a full beat. And then he's putting in a micro bend on it. We're not talking, you know, otherwise he would be bending up to a major third, which would sound horrific against that D minor. But it's just a slight little push of the string as he goes down, which just makes it sound a little bit off, which is fitting for the sort of theme of the song. The other thing, I love repetition, and repetition of one note I think is really ballsy. It's really like, I'm just going to play this one note. And I think what it does is it sets up that question in the listener's head. When are they going to stop doing that? Not in a bad way, but it just creates tension because it needs, you know, it needs to go somewhere, doesn't it? So he doesn't do it for too long, but I think it just kind of sets the scene and really goes with the mood of the song. And another really simple thing, if I just put the music in entirety on the screen, there's less rests in the last couple lines. So it builds an intensity. Like once you've hit bar 10, there's no rests at all. It's not like there's tons of rests in the first couple lines, but there is a bit of space here and there. So, you know, by having that last bit building up to the end of his solo with no rests, it just, I don't know, just gives the solo a strong finish building up to an end. And a real simple solo strategy is to start very phrased, leave a lot of space between your lines and build up to less space, so there's more tension and more going on, which then builds like to a climax, which, you know, is resolved by when Peggy starts singing again. Another thing I really like is to step into the chords where he does lead-in phrases, like at the start, 1, 2, 3, that bit, which is, you know, flat 5, 5, root, up to that third, which I think nicely sets you into the solo, sort of step into it. And when we reach the G minor on the second line, he does, you know, a classic rhythmic phrase, which is 1 and da da da, 1, with the triplet then. It sort of leads into this D minor really nicely. 1 and 2 triplet, like that. Now this is when the chord is G minus G minor, so outlines it perfectly. So those 2 examples are there where he's sort of, you know, with chord tones and the approach notes. You know, in the D minor instance it was a flat 5 to 5 root third. This time it's major 7 root, then just a triad, then the 7th. So using chord tones, but like with that one approach note to sort of lead into it. It really explicitly outlines the chords that way, but is interesting. Another thing I really like is the use of sweeping. He just does this once in a solo, I mean it is only one chorus after all, but he goes, which is a B flat triad. This is when the chords are going B flat 7, A7. So there's a sweep here, that. So the F is the main note, but you get the B flat and the D just before, very quickly. And you go up to the 7th of the A7, 5th, 3rd, root, the sweeping, you just have to angle the pick more down towards the floor, and you have to let the pick go down in one motion, so it hits 3 strings. And it's not like 3 independent pick strokes, it's one, just let it drag down. The fingers have to release quickly as you do it. That's the key. If you leave them all down, it will, you know, won't work so well. So I quite like that use of sweeping because you don't hear it too often in that sort of earlier sort of jazz context. And the fifth thing I like about this solo, so it's one chorus, so you've only got one chorus. You haven't got time to get, you know, ideas flowing and developing too much. You've got to say something with the space that you've got. And one thing he does really effectively is close it off. Really strong ending. I'll put the music on the screen again so you can follow it, but this is the last line. So what I really like there is this, the last tiny bit. So this is a D minor triad going down from the 5th, jumping down to the major 7th or the 3rd of A7, and then going D, root, 5, da da. So it finishes on a chord tone, doesn't finish on the root, but that's a very strong finish, that interval. And it's one of the chord tones, the 5th is a strong sounding chord tone. And I think it's something really important to try to do, always strive to do with your solos, is when it comes to your end, especially when you're playing with other people, is to finish with a phrase which does say, I'm ending guys, it's someone else's turn. And he finishes perfectly for Peggy Lee to just resume singing the next verse. I mean, it's probably obvious for them, they probably know he's only going to take one solo, but when you're playing live with people, you don't necessarily always agree, oh, just take one solo, take 2 solos. Sometimes people might take 3, 4, 1, many more, and whatever happens when they get to the end, there needs to be either some good eye contact or a nod, but even better than that, or combined with those things, is a phrase which is very strong and finishes neatly with the chords. So check out the video of him playing it and his other playing. One of his greatest songs is called Mañana. I play that in one band that I play with. That's a really fun song, sort of Latin mambo sort of thing. And then, you know, maybe if you feel like it, learn the solo, you've got the tabla notation, and try and play along, or, you know, try and pick out some ideas from it you like, or see what you can take from it. And that's always the thing about learning someone else's solos. Ask yourself, what could I take from this? What could I learn from his approach? Like, being able to play the solo as an end in itself isn't that big a deal. It's not a very useful thing. It's more useful to learn about phrasing, how he's phrasing, like some of the ideas I've picked out, how he closes off, note choice, things like that. So you can say similar things yourself if you want to play in that sort of style. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, my name's Andy, Jazz Guitar Lessons every Wednesday and Saturday, and be sure to subscribe if you don't, hit the like button, leave me a comment if you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next time.